Okay, you know who we are. You know what we do. This is American pop that we're talking about today.
Yes, I would also like to point out that right before this recording started, one of us three disparaged another for not being a homeowner. So we have at least one confirmed
Oh,
capitalist. And we are looking at the land of capitalism in the least capitalistic filmmakers perspective. Yeah, we're looking at American Pop, Ralph Bakshi's, I think 1981. Does it come out? I
better
really
that way.
should look up
Yeah,
months before the show.
It's definitely the 80s.
I think
81 sounds right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is 1981, but weirdly, because of the music licensing, it did not actually get released for like 5 or 6 years later. And apparently it's because Bakshi was like, it was 1981. How was I supposed to know what
The
video
soundtrack is crazy.
It had to be so expensive.
Yes. Yes, because they did not license ancillary rights for like home release, the same way that like some video games end up being pulled because the music rights expire. It was kind of like that, except he didn't do it in the first place. The credits are really cute though, because it acknowledges the score, but it's like the following songs were sung by characters in the film, but they are actually by Bob Dylan, Bob Seger, several other Bobs. So yes, this is very much a comfort film for me, a warm water
No,
movie.
but we both
Had
liked it
either
a
of you
lot.
two seen it before? Okay, now, Paulo, I'm gonna need you
No,
to
I thought it
back
was
up and stop
fantastic.
talking over the lady. Oh, yeah.
The flash forwards. The flash forwards were a bit severe, but they just kind of came and went without like a whole lot of heads up a lot of times. But yeah.
Oh, I've been described as doing the same. You know, if you enjoyed that here, Paulo, quit interrupting.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Talk to the lady. So as we were
Favorite
saying,
quote from the movie: "Did the brain fairy leave you a quarter last
what are you
night?"
doing after recording? Oh man, yeah. So in broad strokes, for those of you who haven't seen it, which is probably a lot of people, and many of those people are not listening, and that's fine. We don't need them. We don't need that negativity, you know? But there is a family that suffered lots of negativity, the Zelenskys, not the Ukraine ones, but 4 generations of a Russian Jewish family that emigrate to America. We learn the story of 4 men who are all connected to music, all with the dream of making it big until life gets in the way, and in 3 of the 4 cases, death.
Yep. Oh god.
So, I think when we looked at Wizards, right, that was a film that we argued about, like, the quality of the animation. I think the first point of comparison between last episode and this one is we're looking at a film that almost exclusively uses the technique Bakshi's known for.
He's not going to talk until you invite him to.
Oh man, he's like a vampire. Well, if you're looking for a guy who has no trouble opening up, well, I suggest we invite your husband.
Am I allowed to talk
Swerve.
now?
Follow you.
Allowed to speak? Can I talk?
You're allowed.
Are we sure? Are we all sure?
I'm sorry, I was unfair to you.
So what's rotoscoping?
Yes. Yes. It's okay. Come back. Rotoscoping. It's basically using live filmed animation footage as a referent and then drawing on top of that film. So,
I've
have you seen the
seen
Scanner
Scanner
Darkly or Waking
Darkly.
Life?
Have you seen any Linklater films?
No, but I've seen Wizards.
Which also has rotoscoping.
But not very much of it. Whereas this is a film that simply the consistent frame to frame animation, it's not perfect rotoscoping. It's hand done as opposed to Scanner Darkly, but it leads to, I think, a much more polished look overall for
Definitely
the
agree.
film.
But I kind
Agree,
of liked it
disagree?
less. Like I definitely agree that it looked better, but I don't know. I liked how Wizards looked. I loved how crappy it was.
Well, this one also has. Yeah, there's a charm to it. Like, hey, gang, let's make an animated movie. Whereas I think here we're seeing both a more polished work and a work that feels so much more personal. You know, and it's kind of like that. There's two ways to go about it. Like the Frank Capra tier of, look, folks,
Look,
America,
folks,
what a
America.
country. And then there's like the yeah. And then there's like the Robert Zemeckis view where it's like, hey guys, America, pretty damn grand, and we never had it better than 1968. And it's like, unless you lived in Chicago, I guess, or Vietnam. I don't know. I hate gold majors. And if there's one thing that makes this film, I think, avoid that sort of golden age sentimentality, is that horrible things happen to all four of these men, both arising from and like influenced by
To be
the
fair,
music or
every terrible thing that
entertainment
happens to
industry.
Tony, he deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're introduced. Yeah, we're introduced to him. Basically, we're introduced to him listening to Allen Ginsberg and being like, "I want me some of that." I like how through the four generations of Zelensky family, they develop further and further
What
into
were you gonna
jive
say?
talking.
Oh, I don't know.
You were picking up your notebook.
I don't. Yeah, I'm just fidgeting.
Okay, so the film basically is four stages, like Kurosawa even. We follow Zalmi, whose parents flee Russia during
I
the
love
pogroms,
Zalmi.
and a prayer is interrupted. They move. Yes, yes. So tell us
Because
about
he
Zalmi.
says my
Why
favorite
do we
line
love
in the
him?
movie, which is, I used to have a different voice, but I sent it to the laundry and it came back shrunk. And I'm gonna be thinking about that line for forever.
It's
My
incredible.
second favorite line came from Zalmi. A stripper getting dressed isn't beautiful unless she's ugly to begin with.
Yep. It's he I think it's interesting because his period of time is vaudeville, right? And his whole shtick is he wants to be a singer, then he gets shot in the throat, and then he just starts working in the business and becomes mob adjacent. But it's interesting because his whole sequence is almost written like vaudeville, where it's snappy dialogue back and forth, and in ways that the latter ones don't necessarily lead to. Because, all right, so Zalmi though ends up having a son, young Benny. He more or less marries into a mob family during Prohibition and booze running, and Eventually, little Benny grows up
Benny
to be
has the
the
best personality out
swinningest
of the
jazz
four by a
pianist you've
mile.
ever seen.
He
Yeah?
pretty
What are you
openly just
basing
let
that
himself
on?
get shot. He played piano in a war zone. Like,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
aren't we all?
he's also very woke, you know? Yeah, but his whole thing is that, everybody wants him to turn pro and cut a record, and Zalmi is practically begging him to, and sort of the succeed where I failed. I love old Zalmi's
Oh,
voice. It makes
100%.
every line read of his so expressive once you get used to it. But, and then he more or less says, look, if you're not gonna pursue a career, I need you to marry the boss's daughter. And he's, sure, Pop. And Dad, this isn't work. This is play. There are so many line reads that I just know verbatim.
What's
I've
the
seen
what's
this
the
movie
Zalmi
a
line you were
great
saying
number of
to me the
times.
other day that you just really, really loved? Okay.
We're coming up to it. Don't you worry. Yes, so Benny gets married to Palumbo's daughter, and then they move into the house, and there's this really nice dreamy sequence, the blue scene of them coming in. It's like, what are we gonna do with such a big house? Fill it with kids. And then does the, is that what you want? So, and it's like, I got a belt for him. And then he enlists in World War II, and Zalmi is furious. And there's that great sequence of Benny more or less calling out Zalmi about what to do with one's life. It's like, I'm gonna fight in the war. Do not judge me or moralize. Zalmi does the, hey, Benny, I gave, all right? I gave at the office.
Mm-hmm.
And Benny points out, yeah, and you took too. And I love that. But he goes off to war, plays the harmonica. The guys razz him about. They're like, do you even know how to play? He's like, no. Like, why do you
Oh,
have
that
it?
was
He
a
says, you
great
can't fit a
delivery.
piano in a foxhole. But then he, yep. And most of the cast is not famous. However, Bakshi himself again voices a character, and Lee Ving from Streets of Fire, Flashdance, and lead singer and key figure behind the incredible band Fear. He does a voice near the end briefly. Um, yeah, so Benny is dead at war though, because as you said, he stops and plays piano. Um, German soldier wakes up and he just keeps playing the song and embraces death in a
That's probably my
surprisingly
favorite
brutal
scene in the
scene.
movie, honestly. It just it,
Bakshi himself retweeted that today, so look it up.
yeah.
So I guess that's the other thing. For an animated film, were you expecting the
Considering we had
level of
just come off
violence
of
that we
Wizards,
see?
yes.
Well, but the beginning of the film with like the opening credits, right, with the hand painted drawings and that sweeping
Well,
like
considering
American Tail style presentation. Suddenly we got to like prohibition guys getting gunned down. And I like how Bakshi hates the mob.
nothing wrong with the
He's cool
mob.
like that. And then, yeah, we see scenes of war, and then we see Benny being shot to death in the back.
They just start with his mother
That
being
takes
killed.
us
Yeah, they just start with
a little
Zolmi's
bit in the
mom
future.
being killed. Yeah, there's so much, and
Oh,
then the
yeah, and the
very first
Triangle
scene is the
Shirtwaist fire.
pogroms.
The shirt factory
Oh,
was
yeah,
like
that's true.
insane.
I kind of forgot about that. Yeah. There's a lot of dead people in this movie, and not just because it was made a long time ago. I guess then we go into Tony, and in some ways, Tony is the anchor character.
But man, I
He
wish
is
he
very much a
wasn't.
bridge between generations. Yeah, it's a hep cat. Plus, there are scenes of him playing Take Five. And there's also montages of like Sing 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 and people dancing to it mixed with like World War II footage and things like that.
I
It's
just
an effective
wish
device.
he died much sooner.
And like mm. Now why do
Because
we
he's
dislike
cringe. He's awful to
Tony
listen
so
to.
much?
He's got a terrible dog shit personality. And we all know people who do drugs are bad people.
Yep.
And he got a real hang up on
His hair
floor.
is stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah, his
he's way too
hat
into
is
corn.
fucking dumb. He's hung up on corn. He's hung up on heroin. He's hung up on not being a good role model.
You know, they do say that
He did
corn
not
is
learn
the
his
heroin
father's
of the
lessons of
vegetables, after all.
wokeness. That's true. People fiend for it. You know, it literally ties. It is responsible for.
They should make a website where you could just
It's
look at corn
responsible
all
for
day.
the
Creamed
lies
corn,
both, in a way.
canned corn, corn on the cob, popcorn, Cracker Jacks.
Yep.
You could call it Corn Hub.
This country's the box, and you are my prize. Yeah, we're first introduced to Tony though as a child, where
Watching
Palumbo,
his other
his
grandfather
grandfather,
roll
is bossing
over
around
to.
his mom. Yes. Oh, right. Zombie's wife dies
That was fucked up.
in a
Yeah, every
package
single
bombing.
death was
We
fucked
should
up.
have
Like
mentioned that.
I was not surprised that there was death. Like I was not surprised that there was death,
Yeah,
but
I
every
forgot
time
about
someone
that
died, I
one.
was shocked at how they died.
Well, I think it's also because the bigger plot and like what leads to these scenes is largely inferential and off screen. It sort of leaves it to you to fill in the gaps and like track why these things are happening. So it does come off as pretty sudden at times. But then we get young Tony. Grandpa Palumbo's like, nah, sit down. I want him to see how a man acts.
That was
And it's
Again,
fucking
Zalmi
hilarious.
giving
oh,
federal
yeah.
testimony. This may be my favorite moment in the entire film. And I am smiling like an idiot because Zalmi, you can see things have gone down, but he's testifying, and they're like, what's your name? Zalmi Belensky, current resident of the Jacksonville State Prison. Real nice place. And he's humbled, and he is before the court. And the line that I love so much, and the way that he delivers it, and the way the rotoscoping captures the facial nuance that makes it work. So I say, what was your relationship with Mr. Palumbo? And he says, a relationship? He was my friend. And the lilt and like the expressivity in that, like the way he delivers it, it's just has such an emotional effect to it that like it's believable, and the indignation felt and not expressed of betrayal just hits so hard in the way that line is delivered. And then he follows it up with, yeah, he was my friend. They say they'll get me out soon, and then they say that they'll get me out in a couple of months, and then they say nothing.
Through that.
8 years is a long time. And Yeah, and Palumbo flips out, and I knew we went soft after his boy died. We should have caught, or you told me not to worry about him. Well, we'd be a lot less worried if he was dead. Then Louis pipes in with,
That
well,
no, that
always
line was
wanted to
fucking
sing. Let's
awesome.
let him. Yeah, it's and then we get Tony, who, yeah, we're introduced. He's listening to Richard Mall, who was Bull on Night Court and Two-Face on Batman the Animated Series, among many other roles. He is basically doing Allen
And
Ginsberg reading
Tony's like, we
Howl.
gotta go, we gotta go.
Now, Hollow, I understand. Yeah, we're underage, and there's
What are we
people
gonna
smoking
do?
drugs. Like easy, Jughead. Um, piss off, Screech. I'm enjoying the
Yeah, his
vibe.
buddy just couldn't hang.
Yeah, he. But Tony
That
then
argument is
comes
fucking
home, argues
scary.
with his siblings. The idea of like, you don't understand the real world. Boom.
I'll let her do that because
Yes, walk us
she
through it.
loved that scene and wrote down the lines when
Oh god.
talk about Tony coming home to his siblings.
Perfect.
Honestly, I don't even fucking. I'm bad at moment to moment things. He comes in the door, gets mad at his siblings. His siblings tell him his mom told him not to listen to him because he's an asshole. And he said, "Did the brain fairy leave you a quarter last night?" And then he goes to Kansas with a bunch of hobos. They all get out of the car. He leaves.
Yep.
They say, what are you
Yep.
doing with the car? And he says, it's stolen. And then they all run off. That's all I remember from like 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, it's classic. Yep, and then he's riding the rails for a while.
He meets Corn Girl.
Trying to play harmonica, and
That's
looks
important.
at a dishwasher. Yep, meets Corn Girl. They have a moment in the field, and yeah, they do it real well.
Hmm.
You get a surprisingly tender scene of them doing it in the corn. And we get literal children of the corn as a result. But Tony ends up going to LA. While playing harmonica, he's invited upstairs by Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company. Now, this whole scene, we get the Sid and Nancy dynamic of tortured lovers who fall into drugs together. We also get Tony more or less being the songwriter for the band. And canonically, Tony is responsible for writing Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, as well
So were
as
they basically
Starland
supposed to
vocal
be
bands
Fleetwood Mac?
Up and Away. They're kind of a mix of Fleetwood Mac, Janis Joplin / Big Brother and the Holding Company, and what's her nuts?
Well, and then
Grace
they dropped the
Slick,
"All You Need Is Love"
who isn't
line,
dead.
and they didn't even like use the song.
Well,
I was waiting for that song to show up for like 20 minutes.
Well, that was way after.
Yeah. No, but they did get Purple Haze and a rotoscope
Oh, I missed
sequence
that.
of
I didn't
Jimi
understand what was
Hendrix
happening
playing
there.
it. Well, also they end up the band becomes a hit. Tony writing songs for them, but the rock and roll excess and Vietnam and the counterculture takes its toll. Everyone ends up hooked on drugs, namely Frankie, the Stevie Nicksian, Joplinian,
Janice
Alanis
Ray Joplin.
Morissettian vocalist. Yes, that's the one. She noted blues rocker. There's that really dope sequence though where everyone's on acid at the concert and they play "Somebody to Love" by
Aren't they
Jefferson Airplane. It
that
slaps
point?
hard.
Aren't they Jefferson
But also
Starship
Tony
at that
ends
point?
up, huh? No, they were Airplane
Their
at
name
that
what?
point.
Jefferson Airplane?
So
Okay,
Jefferson
I know
Airplane
Jefferson Starship. I
became
did not
Jefferson
realize they had a
Starship.
prior name.
That's impossible.
What? You did not real? Oh my God! You did not realize that Starship
No,
was a
I
better
This is
band
heartbreaking
before?
because I've talked about Jefferson Airplane before, so that just shows that she's never once listened to me talk about it.
well, and I bought multiple records of theirs when we were because their records are
Well,
like their albums are always, yeah, but no clue what's happening around me.
well, what I will say is, Hollow, if it helps, if
Yeah,
I
no one
was your
ever.
spouse, I wouldn't listen to you either. Just kidding. Um, yeah, so we get the Somebody to Love sequence. Tony ends up taking
Like
acid and
all of his
falls off the
bones, yeah.
stage, and I guess breaks every bone in his body. Yeah, they're like, "How you feeling?" And he says, "Like a fucking
Dig my
M&M.
thin
Check out
candy
my thin
shell.
candy shell."
Make sure you're using the right hippie
Yes,
vernacular.
dig. Don't literally dig it. Yes. Yep. And then he ends up being left behind. Then
You
he
got
has
any
that phone
dough?
call where he's like, "So anyway, man, you got any dough? Come on, man. I need some smack." Um, it's pretty cringe. So you don't feel bad for him. Also, his hair grows out and he looks like an asshole, and his hat is stupid, and it's the kind of hat that
Yeah,
assholes
his
wear, and
siblings.
he acts like an
I
asshole.
was
And yeah,
into the
his
hat.
siblings were right. He is kind of an asshole. Yeah, but he reunites with the band and like romantically couples with Frankie. We get that awesome scene. I dunk on hippies and like hate Ashbury shit all the time, and that's why I love the scenes of like Tony showing up at the studio while they're playing "Up Up and Away" by Starland Vocal Band, for the record. And like we suddenly get like bearded dude with long hair and like a headband grabbing Tony
You
by the
can't handle your
lapels. And
shit.
He
Yeah, if you
did.
can't handle your shit, don't take it.
It's like slow. Yes. Yeah, it's like slow down, Gator. You're harsh and my mellow here. Um just I love the idea of angry hippies doing the indignant "Hey man."
Which leads
For
us
some reason that
into
just
Little
delights me, and I
Pete's.
think it's because
The
of his
thing I like
flow.
least about
But
Pete, the final Zelensky, is the
Well,
hey man.
you can't skip Frankie's death.
yeah,
That was the most soul crushing death of the whole
Oh, true.
time.
yeah. Yes. Because they hook up and then on tour in Kansas, where everyone's too wasted to know where it is, and we see things are starting to fall apart and success is getting to them. We're introduced to Little
Corn
Pete,
girl.
who happens to look exactly like Cornfield Waitress. Yes. And all he remarks on, because "I'm Little Pete." And I'm like, what about Big Pete? And he says, "I don't know. He's kind of a mystery." And Tony realizes it immediately. It is never said. And I kind of like that there's
I
no
think it would be
open
much funnier.
acknowledgement,
My
but there's
headcanon is that it's
acknowledgement.
not his
I
child.
Oh really? Yeah. It's like when Steve Martin hosted the Oscars. I think one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard. He was like, "People ask if movies are too violent these days. I'm not sure. I do know that I took a 7-year-old to go see Gladiator and they cried the whole time. But maybe that's because they didn't know who I was." Imagine the idea of someone kidnapping you and just going to a movie.
Yeah, so that's basically though. In my head, it's just he said, "Well, this is probably my kid. I'll let him follow me from Kansas City to New York."
Yeah. My life is a mess, and next scene, Frankie dies of an overdose. We get that. Also, the kind of weird,
Just
but the
having
scene of him in the
people
cornfield,
down.
like screaming silently while, yes, and that's also while Big Brother and the Holding Company's "Summertime" rendition plays on the soundtrack. It's a scene that works because the rotoscoping again captures facial detail in a way
For
that
our
like
rabid
trying to
Gen
do that in
Z and
Wizards
Gen A
wouldn't
fans, I
work.
just want to say that in this scene, you would say that Tony is crashing out pretty violently.
Yeah, he's definitely having a struggle sesh, you know. And struggle's even worse because we see everybody lined up outside a building and they're wheeling out a dead body with an arm hanging out and a band tied around the arm. We see Frankie, you had your shot at your top. Now you've
Oh man, I
had
just
one
realized that was
shot
a
too
heroin
many.
band. I thought it was like an
That's
arm
the
bracelet
ego.
thing.
It had a little bell on it. It had a little. It had
Oh
no.
no,
It
it
had a cute
wasn't
little bell on it. I
sentimental,
think it
it
was
was
just a
drugs.
doodad.
Okay.
No,
That's definitely a little
I
bell.
think
Oh
it's a
wait,
tie into
yeah, I need to.
syringe because they make it explicit that they're both
I'm not
addicted to
saying there's
heroin.
no syringe.
The point is, I'm saying if that's what it's supposed to be, it's on the nose because it's like, okay, we can infer it's drugs already, but it's like, well, we need to make sure people know that there's still
And
a
then he has
needle
to
in the
tuck her arm
corpse's
under the
arm.
thing because no one bothered to put her arm on the little stretcher. They just let it dangle and
Yeah,
all floppy.
yeah, the paramedics are yeah, the paramedics
Oh my
it's
god.
a right to work state.
Oh.
Yeah, they hired a bunch of scabs down at the docks. Guys are lining up at the fence, and they're like, "I need
And one of
five
them goes,
stout
"You
men to be
know how to read,
paramedics."
boss?"
So, yeah, I didn't ask if you know how to read. I asked if you know how to work. That's not what happens in the film that follows. Instead, Tony and Lil Pete end up back in the rotten apple that is New York, a squalid hellhole. Crime is on the rise through the 70s and 80s. Hedonism and drugs rule the scene. Law and order are a myth of the past, and literal priests burst into flames at the sight of hell on earth. Urban style. This is
They do some
America.
great drug stuff.
So we enter the punk phase. Yeah. Well, we get I'm Waiting for the Man by Lou Reed, not the Velvet Underground version, which is better. Um, we get montages of them selling drugs and eking by. It's basically Midnight Cowboy, except they're dealing instead of pimping out John Voight. All of this culminates with them sitting by the harbor on a bench, and they they have a moment where Tony more or less demands Lil Pete's guitar, but acknowledges I'm gonna pawn it. Pete protests, and then I'm gonna unpawn it, and he then gives Pete the harmonica. He
I.P.
tells him
Benny.
that it was his father's, and he never really. Yeah, Benny, who is a real talented guy, and he wants Lil
I'm
Pete to
calling
have
bullshit.
it.
They got that
And
harmonica back from Germany.
right, it's like the walk from Pulp Fiction.
It's like Saving
Right?
Private Ryan,
There's the
Ryan on
bit
this
where
harmonica.
Tony snaps. And he's like, "Why do you even follow me around anyway?" And then Lil Pete says, "Why the hell do you think?" And then at the end, when he gives him the harmonica, Lil Pete's like, "Why are you giving me this?" And Tony says, "Why the hell do you think?" And I do like that touch. But he basically tells him to wait there. He waits. Eventually, some guy comes along, gives him a satchel
It's
of
called "Don't Sell
drugs,
All This at
basically
Once."
seed money, and gives him a message. Yeah. And I mean, like, it is true that diversifying your supply, you will make more profit. But we also don't want to lose our clean listening tag. So I won't get into the math on that. You know who does get into the math
Did we
on
ever see
that?
Tony again
Lil
after
Pete.
that? Or was that just the last time we saw Tony?
He walks off
He
with
just-
Pete's guitar, and you just don't see him again.
Yep, and he also gives the message, goodbye. We also glommed over when Tony is sleeping under the bridge, and some guy walks over. Pete is
So
like holding his head, and he
casually,
pulls
too.
a switchblade.
Like, just a Monday. Mondays.
Yep. This kid's hardcore. He's also
Like
wearing
from a
Bret the
very
Hitman
young
Hart's
age, and just
shades.
never takes them off.
Exactly. It's his affect. He's like Cyclops. Yeah, so we don't get much on Pete, but we get montages of like the punk scene, him slinging drugs to everybody, being real hip about it. We get Pat Benatar's Hell is for Children, and we get the Sex Pistols' Pretty Vacant, which is a killer song. And some very like almost
Like when he's
grotesque
standing on
background
the giant
paintings that he's
razor
moving
blade.
through.
Yeah, the imagery is rough.
Yeah, it's it's a very quick encapsulation of the kind of world that Pete's been living in to survive. Then we get the recording studio, where he walks in as the band, and I believe Leaving is one of the guys, being like, no, okay, my man's gonna be here. He always ends up being here. And then he walks in, slams the briefcase down on the table, and announces apparently the line read that convinced Bakshi to cast the actors. It's a man. We deliver. Oh yes, and as Pete was walking through, he also heard a rabbi finishing the prayer that was left unfinished at the start of the film. Then he goes to sling some coke, and basically he
Play one
gives
of my
the band an
songs or
ultimatum.
no
and
drugs.
tells them, it's like, I got a new proposition for you. Song announce. You play one of my songs. And then they're like, no, you can keep your songs. Fine. And then I will keep the coke.
Oh, it's painful.
And this is like
Painfully
he's
hep.
the heppest cat around. And oh, it is so hilarious. I just love it. Like, this guy would get the shit kicked out of him routinely, like every single day of his life. He skates around like nobody notices. He ends up hardlining with the band and with the producers as well. And it's, come on, Pete, is it about the money? And then another great line read is, for years now, I've been a running and affection
I don't
for
want
you,
to be a
and I don't want to
Candyman no
do
more.
it no more. Exactly. He is, and finally, through the power of drug leverage, they agree. Elvis and his minions in the control booth acquiesce and let him play one song. And this is the scene we see in so many other films, right? Where we see it in Walk the Line, we see it in Ray, like the moment where you have to show your worth, and it ends up being like these.
What if they just played dud? What if they just happened to play like his worst song?
Like Rebecca's Black's Friday.
Okay, so I was going to say to both of you, because I love the way this whole sequence is animated, and I love the way that all the ambient audio cuts out. He walks up to the piano, and he just doesn't just snap his fingers, but throws his snap in the air 4 times. He walks up and begins to play. Now, Hollow Ale. What would be a song you think would fit? It's like that capstone song for 4 generations of trying to make it big, all leading up to this moment.
4 generations worth. Yeah, I don't know. It'd have to be something Bob Segery, right?
Maybe? Hollow, female. What would
Thriller.
be a song you would play for this scene? Thriller? Yeah, because it would show like he understands the 80s, his hepness. What if, oh my god, what if he's supposed to be codified as Michael
Hey,
Jackson, but
man.
he's just drawn to look
That would
like
be a
Lou
crazy
Reed?
interpretation of things.
Yeah, that would be a wild take to put out in the world.
Interesting.
Uh,
This movie just got more fascinating. So all that to say though is he steps up to the piano and it has been said that this was supposed to be free,
It plays in the
which
Yeah,
does
it was in
play
the
over the end
intro.
of credits. Wherever the song we get, yes, yes. This the song he plays is Bob Seger's Night Moves, and I will point out it's a unique recording of it because there is no studio pressing where it is as piano based as this one. And he plays Night Moves. Everyone's jaw drops. They turn on the recording. I have a good friend who I was talking about this film with, and he just couldn't stop dunking on the ending because, as he put it, 4 generations of suffering, alienation, loss, tragedy, all of it leading up to a moment, and it's a song about horny teenagers having sex in the back seat.
I mean, isn't that what
And I'm
America's
like,
really
well, when you
about?
put it
It's
that
Pretty
way,
valid, yeah.
kind of. He, yeah, he suggested playing Bob
Or
Seger's Catmandu instead.
Harry Chapin, Cat's Cradle.
Yep, I think another great one would just be question
Britney
mark in the
Spears, Give Me
Mysterious
Baby One More
96
Time.
Tears.
Give Me Baby One More Time would actually go
Just walking
crazy
up.
right there.
Or no, change it.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Yeah, because
so
it's also a
lucky.
piano-based hook.
She's a star. Yeah, classic.
Yeah, we're at the beatboxing stage of the episode. But yeah, so obviously, Lil Pete is a smash hit. We get an absurdly full stadium, able to see him play harmonica, sing a montage of songs.
And finally,
including
is
Devil in a Blue
he made
Dress, and yes, and that's where we end with Freebird over the credits. So, I don't know why necessarily I love this film as much as I do, but I think the best way I put it is Ralph Bakshi is a filmmaker of surprising polarity, I guess, both in terms of subject, presentation, and quality. I think this is the best version of Bakshi because it does feel personal. It does feel culturally attentive while losing some of the crassness that comes with like Heavy Traffic or his other social X-rated films. This is him basically doing like the Don Bluth American Tale, but I think it's him getting it largely right. I wouldn't say it's a perfect movie,
I
but
loved
it's a
it.
very
Yeah, I had
endearing
a
one.
blast watching it. I
And
like Wizards more, but that's just because I like
Yeah.
laughing more when I'm watching movies. And I think I really laughed maybe 3 times in this one.
fair enough.
Whereas Wizards has me rolling the whole damn time.
Yeah, it's it yeah. This is not a wacky movie. It's surprisingly like grounded, I guess, for an animated movie. Certainly in 1981, I think
I
you
just
can
like
argue
the ability
that.
to tell 4 lifetimes of stories in an hour and a half.
It Yeah, and again, you can watch this for free on Internet Archive. It's a VHS rip, and it has a bumper for Spice World at the very beginning.
It is
It's
so hard to find
tremendous,
Spice World to
absolutely
watch,
tremendous.
as an aside.
There is a vintage clothing store near where I work that has a TV playing Spice World on VHS like whenever the store is open. I
Ask
will
them
send
for
you
the
a photo of this
VHS
because
and
I
send it
know
to
you
me.
think
They'll
I'm
give it
doing a
to you.
bit. If I
You
go now,
won't,
I can
pussy.
break the window and take it. I will show you
Hey.
what a pussy looks like. I just uncrossed my legs. Um, Point is, I think this is Vaji's like it is a sentimental film in some ways and kind of corny, but I think that comes more from a sense of like earnestness. And we very rarely encounter earnest works anymore. Like everything feels calculated, or there's a touch of ironic detachment to it. And this feels like an unironic, but like genuine. I want to tell a story that captures the good and bad and like everything in between about America in my own way. And if that's the goal, I think
Yeah,
he
I think
largely
Alex K
succeeds.
from Rotten Tomatoes said it best. This movie turned 34 years old last year in 2015.
Is that the only review on IMDb?
Oh, there's plenty of other reviews.
Yep.
That was my favorite.
Yeah,
3
cuts right
stars,
to the
all you need to
quick,
know.
summarizes the movie neatly, much like we did. Yep, it's I don't know, it's a film that I don't think historically it's had quite the sort of cult underground appeal that like Fritz the Cat or Heavy Traffic did, because I think there's a certain kind of film consumer that'll seek that out solely so they can be like, I've seen an X-rated cartoon. But Clockwork Orange and Midnight Cowboy were X-rated films, and that's not quite the same thing as pornography, right? Um, Fascinating subject that we'll leave for another day. So what Bakshi film do you guys want to look at next, knowing
I'm
it's
interested in
likely
Heavy
going to be downhill
Traffic.
from here? Heavy Traffic? Okay. We got more road
Cool
skipping.
World.
Also,
We dunked
yeah,
on the
there's
mob
always
a
Cool World,
lot.
and I'm also. Were we gonna end with Cool World or with Lord of the Rings?
We were going to end with Cool World because for a lot of
We
practical
also
purposes,
did.
that's what happened to
Rude.
Ralph. Oh, right. We also forgot to carry on our tradition. Tweet to the one and only Ralph Bakshi. So while the iron is hot, ooh, I know. You guys can summarize the episode while I try and find his account, and I'll tag us
Summarize the
all in
episode
it.
or the movie? Because this episode was a little everywhere.
Much like Bakshi's films and life itself. Okay, at Ralph Bakshi, what do we say? I think American Pop is your best movie, and my loser friends say otherwise.
Did your
What
brain
do you
fairy
think?
leave a quad under your pillow last night?
P.S. Do you resent Brad Pitt?
What?
for
Why?
helping
Why
ruin his
would he
career with
resent
Pool World.
Brad Pitt? Oh, I'd have pinned it on Gabriel Byrne. Talk about getting burned on that casting call. Hey, everybody, I'm a sex symbol. Bagor.
And I think we
I'm
cut
from
on, hey,
Ireland.
everybody, I'm a sex symbol.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll leave this in. If you want to get in touch with us, or you want to support the show, you got input, you want to leave a comment, yeah, just don't.